This section deals with the Florida Construction Industry Licensing Board, okay, and otherwise Chapter 489 of the State of Florida statutes. Basically, this is the chapter that gives the State of Florida the right to regulate contractors, okay? And as for exam questions, these may seem absolutely silly questions and obvious things, but they're easy answers to get right. And so you want to study this section very well so that you know it backwards and forwards, because they're going to ask you 18 or 20 questions out of this relating to Chapter 489. And their point is they want to make certain that you understand that they have the right to control you and to tell you what to do. And if you mess up, they can and will fine you, put you in prison, take away your license, do all sorts of things like that. And they want to impress that on you. And it's very easy to lose your license. If something goes wrong, just boom. It's important to understand that Chapter 489 of the Florida statutes gives the Construction Board the power to regulate the construction industry and to discipline contractors or persons who hold themselves out to be contractors. The regulation of professions by government has two major objectives, and they want you to know this for the exam: to protect the public and ensure safety by preventing unqualified individuals from practicing a given profession, and to establish standards of practice for those who engage in a particular profession. Generally, any person who for compensation undertakes to, submits a bid to, or does himself or by others construct, repair, alter, remodel, add to, demolish, subtract from, or improve or build a structure, including related improvements to real estate for others or for resale to others, must be licensed. Okay, so basically anyone who alters real estate, alters buildings on real property, needs to be licensed if the amount of money is more than $1,000. Now, there are licensing exemptions. These don't make a lot of sense. On the exam, you'll get a couple questions that relate to this. Who has to be licensed? Who doesn't have to be licensed? Highway, street, road, bridge, and railway contractors don't have to be licensed. Employees of licensed contractors acting within the scope of the contractor's license don't have to have their own license. Federal, state, and local government employees, except school boards and boards of regents and community colleges, unless for the purpose of performing routine maintenance or repair or construction not exceeding $200,000 to existing buildings. And also, these people must not hold themselves out for hire or otherwise engage in contracting except in accordance with government employment. Court-appointed officers don't have to be licensed. Public utilities, persons who sell or install finished products, materials, or merchandise which are not fabricated into and do not become part of a permanent fixed structure, they don't have to be licensed. Property owners acting as their own contractor don't have to be licensed. Any construction for the United States government doesn't have to be licensed. With certain exceptions, persons performing work of casual or inconsequential nature with a contract price of less than $1,000, unless the person represents that he or she is a qualified contractor. Okay? So, a handyman can do any job that's up to $1,000. If it's $1,001, he's breaking the law. A construction contractor must subcontract the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, roofing, sheet metal, swimming pool, and air conditioning work when a local examination for certificate of competency or license is required in those areas, unless the contractor himself holds a state certificate of competency or a license in those other areas. So, as a contractor, you can build the building, but you have to hire an electrician to run the wiring, HVAC guy, a plumber, a roofer, and any sheet metal work, you have to hire a sheet metal guy. If you want a swimming pool, you have to hire a pool contractor, unless of course you're a GC. A GC can put in his own swimming pool. And so you have to use the subcontractors even if you are a licensed general contractor or building contractor or residential contractor. You're not required to subcontract the following. General building and residential contractors are not required to subcontract wood shingles, wood shakes, asphalt or fiberglass shingle roofing materials on new construction only. If it's a re-roof, you're supposed to use a roofer. General contractors can build swimming pools. General contractors can build sanitary sewer collection systems, stormwater systems, or water distribution systems on new site development work, site redevelopment work, and mobile home parks. General contractors can connect utility lines from the mains on the mobile home parks. Okay.
Sure.
Subcontractors, one thing you want to try to figure out is this person really a subcontractor or are they more like an employee? Okay, if they don't meet all the qualifications as a subcontractor, you'll be responsible for all the work they do. If anything goes wrong, you as the contractor will be responsible for it. An independent contractor allows you to considerably lower your payroll taxes. You have no FICA or FUTA or state unemployment tax. There are fewer administrative costs, no withholding, no payroll taxes, no workers' compensation, no age discrimination problems, no Americans with Disabilities Act that apply only to employees. Also, there are no retirement or fringe benefits to pay. So there's a lot of incentive to use a subcontractor. Okay, but if an independent contractor violates any laws, then the person who holds the contractor's license and pulled the building permits will be held responsible, just as if the individuals had been employees of the contractor. So whoever pulls the building permit is responsible. You can't get out of it, even if you hire a subcontractor. If anything goes wrong, ultimately they're going to sue, fine, or pull the license of the person who pulled the building permit. And you want to always keep that in mind. As soon as you pass this exam and you get your license, a lot of people are going to offer you jobs and say, yeah, just come pull the permits, oversee the job, we got everything going. All you've got to do is watch it. All you've got to do is watch what we're doing. You know, just keep an eye on us. We got everything sewed. If anything goes wrong, you're the one who's responsible. Also, as soon as that job's over, they can shut down the corporation, just fold it up and not renew that corporation. And you are responsible for any hidden defects for the next 15 years. So you want to be very careful that you get a good lawyer if you're going to take one of these great jobs as a superintendent on a condominium or something. You want to make sure that you have a good legal contract, because you will be responsible for any hidden defects for 15 years, and anything that goes wrong on that job, you'll be responsible for it. Independent contractor. We're going to try to figure out the difference between an independent contractor and an employee. The independent contractor does not have liability insurance, does not have workman's compensation insurance taken out on him, does not pay FICA, FUTA matching funds, does not train employees to use tools properly. If the independent contractor does any of these things wrong, if he or she does any of this stuff wrong, you as the general contractor or the building contractor are going to be responsible for it. And here's some of the things that come up pretty often. If the subcontractor doesn't have liability insurance, your liability insurance will be at risk. If he doesn't have workman's compensation insurance or an exclusion for an exemption for himself or his employees, then you can owe that money. He doesn't pay FICA and FUTA or matching funds to his employees, he pays them cash, you could owe that money. Doesn't train his employees to use tools properly, you're responsible. You need to have an OSHA certificate stating that each of these employees knows how to use the tools. Otherwise, you're required to train them to use those tools. And if they're not trained, anything goes wrong, you're responsible. Independent contractor does not have the proper licensing He may give you a bunch of photographic copies of all his licenses and insurance policies and all that. And if any of them are bogus, then you can be in trouble. You can have to pay all that money. All right, so you've got to be very careful who you're using. When you use a subcontractor, their insurance company has to send you a policy directly. You can't accept a photographic copy from them. Same with anything else. You want everything sent directly from the insurance company or the licensing agency. If the subcontractor hires illegal aliens, non-nationals, you can be fined for it. You could even be put in jail for that, okay? If he hires persons under the age of 16, kids under 16 are not allowed to work in construction. Kids under 18 are not allowed to be on scaffolding or work on any roofing jobs. And if anyone uses these people, as they regularly do, use their sons or nephews or something on jobs, and anything goes wrong, you're responsible. You've got to be very careful about that. And make sure, look at their license and make sure that that kid is 18 or more. Causes or allows an employee to be hurt or killed. If one of your subcontractors' employees get hurt or killed, you're going to be paying for it. You're responsible. If you pull the permit, you're responsible. Boom. Okay, here's something very important to keep in mind. If the Internal Revenue Service determines that your independent contractor was not an independent contractor but was truly an employee, then all of his employees are also your employee, okay? And if the IRS determines that that independent contractor is an employee, you will be responsible for the entire 15.3% due for FICA, plus 6.2% on the first $7,000 of FUTA, as well as any penalties which will likely exceed the payment amount, which will likely exceed the amount you owed in the first place. And this applies to the contractor for the last 4 years he worked for you, as well as for any and all of his or her employees. So let's say you hire this subcontractor, does all your siding work, and you've been using him off and on for the last 3 or 4 years. You think he's an independent contractor, everything's great. IRS comes in and says, no. He actually wasn't licensed, he wasn't properly insured, he was in effect your employee. You can end up owing $100,000 or so. So it's very important that you check all these things out, that you get all the insurance papers and make sure that everyone's licensed and that they do meet the qualifications as an independent contractor. Because if anything goes wrong, the person who pulled the permits, the contractor, is responsible. Okay, penalties for unlicensed activity. If you hold yourself out as a contractor and you haven't passed the exam, they can give you a lot of trouble there too. And on the exam, the state of Florida wants you to understand exactly the kind of things they can do to you, the kind of trouble they can give you if you don't play by their rules. If a person engages in or holds themselves out to be a contractor without first obtaining a license, this is a violation of Florida law. Any person who falsely holds himself out to be a licensed contractor or who engages in contracting without first obtaining a license is guilty of a first-degree misdemeanor. The Division of Business and Professional Regulation, the county, municipal, or local licensing board may issue a cease and desist order to prohibit any person from engaging in the business without a valid license. Any contract entered into by a contractor not licensed pursuant to Part 1 and 2 of Chapter 489 Florida statutes is legally unenforceable. Okay? Any contract entered into by an unlicensed repair person or handyman for more than $1,000 is unenforceable. So if you're a handyman, you charge $1,001, the people don't have to pay you. If you do a $5,000 or $10,000 rebuild on their house, don't have to pay you for it. Not a thing in the world you can do about it. In addition, if the person holds themselves out to be a contractor and causes injury to a person due to negligence, malfeasance, or misfeasance, and is not certified by the state or licensed pursuant to the laws of the city or county in which he does business, the consumer is entitled to 3 times the actual damages sustained and costs and attorney's fees. That's a question that comes up on almost every exam. Here's some requirements for being licensed. Once you pass this exam, then you're going to have a whole new set of hurdles to scale. First of all, net worth of $10,000 in cash or a line of credit or any combination of the two. You can also use a letter from your bank attesting to the fact that you have $10,000, a letter of bondability, or compliance bond issued for $10,000. Any of those will equal $10,000 cash. And the $10,000 cash has to be in the bank for 1 day, and you have your banker write a letter saying, as of this certain day, had $10,000 cash in the bank, and then you can take it back and put it wherever you got it. A credit report that checks to see if the contractor has any construction-related judgments on his or her record. Okay, this is a particular credit report. They cost $75 or $100. It's not your regular little credit report like you'd use to buy a pickup truck or something. This is a very specific one, and there are only about 3 companies in Florida that do this type of credit check. You need public liability insurance of $50,000, $300,000, $50,000 property, $300,000 personal injury. You need workers' compensation coverage or a personal exemption. You need a financial statement not more than 12 months old containing information indicating the current assets and liabilities, total assets and total liabilities, and total net worth of the applicant. It has to be in the exact form as you would see it in the Builder's Guide to Accounting, and if it's not, they'll send it back to you. Okay? So you must answer questions pertaining to unpaid or past due bills or claims for labor, materials, services, liens, suits or judgments, records pending against the applicant or his firm. So if there's anything wrong and it relates to the construction industry, they're not going to give you a license. If your pickup truck got repossessed, chances are they'll overlook that. But if anyone was cheated in a construction deal in almost any state that you worked in, it's really hard to get a license. And the reason they want you to have $10,000 cash is you need to have some money to fall back on, money to operate on while you're doing your jobs. And typically, you should do the size of jobs relative to the amount of cash you have. Like if you have $10,000 cash in the bank, you should be doing $10,000 jobs. If you have $100,000, then you can do $100,000 jobs, because if anything goes wrong, you can afford to pay it off. If you have $10,000 in the bank and you do a $100,000 job, something goes wrong, you can't afford to pay it off. You can't afford to carry it, the job. So you're exposing yourself to a lot of liability there. So you have to be very careful and limit the jobs you do to the amount of cash you have in the bank. Term of the license. They want you to know that your license is good for 2 years. It must be renewed every 2 years, and the contractor is required to take 14 hours of continuing education every 2 years to be able to renew his or her license. Both of those are questions on the exam. How long is your license good for? How many hours of continuing education are you required to take? Okay, these are all easy test questions. You need to get all of these right. You need to understand, you need to know the Florida Construction Licensing Board, Chapter 489, backwards and forwards. Continuing education, contractor must take 14 credit hours of continuing education every 2 years to be able to renew his license. Otherwise, you have to go inactive, but you have to do the 14 hours before you can make your license active again. Business records. Business records and complete financial statements for the business must be kept at the place of business for the preceding 3 years. State of Florida requires you to keep your records for 3 years. The IRS requires you to keep your records for 4 years. And OSHA requires you to keep your records for 5 years. Qualifying agents. If you're going to be a contractor for a corporation a joint venture, partnership, corporation, or such as that, or a trust, or other business organization, then you must apply not to be a contractor, but to be the qualifying agent for that company. Okay? The applicant must state the name of the business they're going to be qualifying, list the directors, partners, officers, trustees, show compliance with the fictitious name statute. The qualifying agent is legally qualified to act for the business organization. The qualifying agent must have the authority to supervise construction jobs, and the qualifying agent must be either a certified or registered contractor. So if you become the qualifying agent for this company, you are also responsible for their financial records, any financial dealings. If somebody mismanages money, the person who pulled the permit is responsible. In addition, if the qualifying agent is the only licensed contractor affiliated with the business organization, the business organization must notify the Department of Business and Professional Regulation of the termination of the qualifying agent and obtain another qualifying agent within 60 days. This test question: how long do you have to get a new qualifying agent after your qualifying agent quits, resigns, or is fired? Okay. The qualifying agent is responsible for supervision of the operations of the business, for all field work at the sites, and unless a financially responsible officer is designated, you're also responsible for all the financial aspects of this business. A sole primary qualifying agent is jointly and equally responsible with secondary qualifying agents for field work supervision. So if you're the primary qualifying agent and you have a couple contractors under you who are doing field work, you're still responsible for the work they're doing. So if they screw up, you're still responsible. A secondary qualifying agent is responsible only for the supervision of the filed works at the sites where his license was used to obtain the building permits, and any other work for which he accepts responsibility. A secondary qualifying agent is not responsible for supervision of financial matters. Florida courts have held that Chapter 489 imposes a professional duty upon the sole qualifying agent of the record for a general contractor to supervise all of the general contractor's projects. Failure to carry out this duty may serve as grounds for revocation of the qualifying agent's contractor's license. A qualifying agent's claim that he had no personal knowledge of the activities of the business entity or of its employees that resulted in the violations of Chapter 489 will not absolve the qualifying agent of responsibility. If anything goes wrong, contractor's responsible. Anything at all. You can come up with all sorts of contracts that say, we will take responsibility if something goes wrong. You don't have to worry about a thing. All you have to do is be the contractor. The state of Florida will not accept that. You can make up all the little contracts between other people that you want. They're not enforceable in court in the state of Florida. You're still responsible. If you pull that permit, you're responsible. So the only thing that's going to cover you is an insurance policy that says if these people do something wrong, the insurance policy or the bond will pay it off. Okay, here's some grounds for disciplinary action. If you obtain a license by fraud or misrepresentation, if you lie about anything while you're getting this license, they can take it away from you. Being convicted or found guilty of a crime related to contracting, they'll take your license. Knowingly violating applicable building codes, assisting a person in unlicensed practice of contracting or in evading licensing. So if here you are, you get your contractor's license, your nephew or something's doing a tile job somewhere, rebuilding somebody's townhouse or something. You happen to stop by and are talking to them while they're doing it. You can't be there. You got to get out of there because they're violating the law. If somebody comes in, you could get in trouble for it. So once you get your contractor's license, if somebody is breaking the law, you can't be there. You can't be helping them. You can't be advising them or anything. You've got to leave Because if anything goes wrong, they will hold you responsible for it, even though you just walked up and are talking to somebody. Like say they're rebuilding their house or something. You walk